After I embraced my suffering, I could see the situation more clearly. As I welcomed my feelings of helplessness, I began to see Jim differently. His out-of-control behavior had felt like a threat when I was trying to control the meeting. Letting go of that, I saw him as he was. Someone who had been treated like shit for a long time. I could see the pain and fear in his eyes, and my heart opened to him. I looked up at Jim with a very different expression than I'd had earlier in the meeting and said his name quietly. I said, "I don't know about anybody else, but I'm glad you care so deeply about making the world better and about being treated with respect. Whatever we do here, I want us to make sure it starts with making the world better and making sure Jim and the drummers are fully respected." Everyone else in the meeting nodded anxiously and looked at Jim. He smiled, and his face resembled that of a scared child, but he nodded too. The tone of the meeting changed, and a week later, we had an agreement that the drummers would play for 2 hours a day at the park and then march around the city for the rest of the day. 3 approaches to conflict. Even though we ended up with a successful resolution, part of me still hates how much time and energy it takes to resolve conflicts. It's a voice in me that sounds like this: if people weren't so stupid and mean, we could focus on making the world better instead of wasting so much time talking about their bullshit. I imagine most people can relate to that frustration. However, as annoying as it can be, conflict resolution is incredibly important, mostly because the alternatives are awful. I believe there are essentially 3 ways to approach conflict. 1, isolation. 2, dominance. And 3, dialogue. There will never be a relationship that's conflict-free, so when shit comes up, our first option is to leave. I've left lots of jobs, groups, relationships, etc., and I'm usually glad I did. However, if it's the only thing we know how to do in response to conflict, we're going to end up pretty isolated. The next option is winner take all, in which one person dominates and the other submits. Sometimes there's a fight to determine who wins, and sometimes people just fall into their roles, always dominating or always submitting. Either way, handling conflict like this usually means that the winner's needs matter and the losers don't. The third and messiest option is dialogue, in which we approach a conflict with a commitment that everyone's needs will matter. We might not be able to figure out how to meet everyone's needs perfectly, but we'll try. For me, the defining feature of dialogue is that, at its best, everyone is on the same side. We are all trying to figure out how to meet the most needs we can. It's not that I'm arguing for my needs and you're arguing for yours. Instead, we're working together to find a solution that meets as many of our collective needs as possible. That might sound unrealistic, but it's not. In fact, with some training, you can learn how to create this kind of connection even with people who are terrible communicators. It's hard and it doesn't always work, but there's a lot more room to improve than most people believe is possible. The 2 poisons: criticism and demand. When we're in a conflict, most of us stop seeing the humanity in the other person. Instead, they become an obstacle, a tyrant, or a thing that we no longer need. But what if we could stay human and stay connected in the middle of a conflict? What if we could see that the other person is trying to avoid suffering and meet their needs just like we are? What if we could value the other person's well-being without at all diminishing our commitment to our own? In other words, we would see that both people's needs matter, even if we have no idea how to solve the problem. To me, this is the essence of dialogue. We won't always meet everyone's needs, and we can't solve every problem. However, we can approach conflicts so everyone's needs matter. Therefore, the real goal in conflict is for all sides to value each person's needs equally. If I feel like you value my needs as much as you value yours, then I can tolerate the likely possibility that my needs won't get met perfectly. However, there are 2